This session is brought to you by Turks and Caicos Hotel and Tourism Association. Just a bit of housekeeping rules before we dive right in and I introduce the speaker. There will be a question and answer session a few minutes at the end, but just so you don't forget your very important questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. In the last 5 to 10 minutes or so, we will attend to them there. I would like to welcome our speaker for today, Ms. Denaye Hinds, who joins us from Caribbean Alliance for Sustainable Tourism. Welcome, Denaye.
Thank you. I'm happy. It's a pleasure to be in my home presenting to you guys.
Thank you so much for joining us. Just a brief bio on Denaye. Ms. Hinds is CEO of JustaTAAD Sustainability and Service, renowned for her exceptional leadership in sustainability, hospitality, tourism, corporate ESG, development, and sustainability compliance. She is chairwoman of CAST, Caribbean Alliance Tourism, Sustainable Tourism.
Former chairwoman.
CAST serves as an initiative of CHTA to provide tourism enterprises with sustainability resources, best practices, and work alongside CHTA and their committees to provide support, advocacy for sustainability and advances in sustainability with the hotel and tourism sector in the Caribbean. Welcome, Denaye. Thank you for being in our presence.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about sharing with you guys some information. We're going to go through circularity, sustainability, and conservation, and just talk with you about some of the many things that I've experienced within my journey as a sustainability consultant for over 20 plus years, and now focus, and also some of the interesting sustainable tech that's coming out, and then looking at different things that we're seeing around the world that we can also utilize in our big ocean states to see us move forward as we tackle a lot of the issues that we're facing today, as it relates to climate, as it relates to weatherization, as it relates to just keeping a sustainable tourism focus. So let's get into it. Again, I mentioned I would talk to you guys about a few things. I'm going to start with resilience because I believe it's key, and just because hurricane season is upon us and we're already seeing the effects of some of these intense storms, frequent and more frequent events such as drought and other things, the need to really be resilient and adapt in these times is crucial. We're going to talk a little bit about some innovation. As I mentioned, there's some interesting fun tech out there that you guys may want to be involved with, kind of understanding or getting more aware with. The concept of circularity and how it really delves into keeping that net zero or that zero emission goal that a lot of people have through their national adaptation plans or through their national determined contributions with the Glasgow Declaration, which CAST obviously has signed on to. And then we'll talk about some conservation. We know coral reefs and biodiversity, mangroves are very important. And then the concept of regeneration, which we're seeing in tourism as kind of not really a buzzword, but a different way to look at sustainability and how we're moving forward with marketing some of the amazing work that a lot of these tourism destinations and hotels are doing in that space as it relates to a lot of these topics. So resilience. We know that we've been hearing about it over the past couple of years. And what are some of the resources that CAST has put in place to help you, to guide you in terms of what we're going to be focusing on and things that you can do to safeguard? Well, we have the Caribbean Tourism Climatic Bulletin, which is always a mouthful to say, but that's in partnership with CIMH and with CTO. And we put it out every 3 months or so to kind of really allow our tourism throughout the region to do some really much needed risk management. We always need to focus on that, especially during these times and this season. It gives information about visitors' health, climate advisories, both for the Caribbean and our source markets, feeder markets, in terms of where our people are coming from. So we have an understanding of some of the things they may be facing and going through, so we can prepare ourselves appropriately for that. And then we have the sargassum outlook. I know it doesn't affect everyone equally, but it affects all of us in the region. So we definitely always need to be keeping our eyes and ears open for what potential sargassum invasions we could be having, because we know that can really devastate our tourism industry as it did in the past. And then it just gives you the ability to plan and prepare. So if you guys are not focused on this or aware of this bulletin, I hope that you are. You should be. We put it out. Please take a look at it. It will give you some much needed information for tourism entities specifically to really look at how they're going to manage their resources. When we talk about managing resources, let's talk about water, right? It's huge. I mean, it can be the deciding factor between if you're healthy or if you're sick. It has so much economic implications, especially in the tourism industry, and the need to safeguard ourselves with resilient infrastructure. Storage is so simple and such an easy adaptive measure, and I can't stress it enough, especially again with hurricane season upon us. It's important that we focus on why water is so important to us and the health benefits that it provides and the waterborne diseases that can occur without having enough or access to water. We know right now that our sister island, Grenada, is feeling it with their water reductions and their drought. It's only a matter of time. Barbados is always going through drought cyclically. And a lot of our other island destinations are always dealing with it. So the need to really shore up and be more resilient in terms of in the face of a lot of these droughts and water shortages, and how we gather our water and how we use and the technology that we use to generate our water is really key. Making sure that you're testing your water, not only your water from your tap for potable water, but water from your shower heads, water from your sinks, water from your hot water in your kitchen, and water from your storage tanks if you have them. That is critical, and cleaning them at least twice a year. Making sure that you're testing your lines for maintenance, that you're not just looking at what's happening with your bills, but that you're doing it in tandem to kind of prevent and not react to a lot of these situations is very key. You can never have enough water on hand, and testing your water, again, as I mentioned, is critical because we need that. Southern Palms here in Barbados has done a tremendous job in terms of they would be a great case study to speak with in terms of their water storage that they've had shored up for the past few years. They have probably maybe around 8,000 gallons of water storage on their property. They lie in the tourism belt of St. Lawrence Gap, where a lot of tourism assets and hotels are. So they generally tend to suffer from water outages here or there, or water pressure decrease, or if one hotel is using too much water, it can affect the other. So they've safeguarded themselves against this, and so I think they are a very great case study because they've been able to find and really get ahead of any issues that may happen with them when water is scarce or when water is unavailable. They still have their backup supply to be able to manage until the municipal water supply can come and actually refill their tanks. So they've done a great job there, and there are a lot of amazing companies who do a lot of the testing and who you can get accredited labs to make sure that you don't have any issues with your water. Legionella is a huge consideration and a huge concern that's happening a lot more often than we'd like. So making sure you're testing for that on a consistent basis is very critical. So here's a question. I'm not sure if everybody has their chat available. I don't expect anybody to answer this, to turn on your mics, but just in the chat, if you wouldn't mind, I like to be a little bit participatory. What do you think is the largest source of water on Earth? So if you could type a few, maybe anybody has an idea of what you think is the largest source of water on Earth. I'm going to give you a few minutes to think on it, and just pop something in the chat and let me know that you are actively listening and engaging with what we're talking about here. And I'm going to give you a few minutes to do that. Well, a few seconds, I should say, to do that. I hope people are on their laptops and able to interact here. Rain, okay. Any other ideas? Groundwater, okay. The ocean, all right, okay. The Amazon, very good, all very good answers, all very good answers. There is 6 times more water in our atmosphere than anywhere else. So the sky is the limit, people. So whoever said rainwater, yes. But we also need to look at it from a standpoint of humidity, okay? The Caribbean region is known for our weather and for our humidity. It's 6 times more water in the atmosphere, and we only need 1% of that to be able to have everyone have access to clean drinking water. I talked about innovation, and there are a lot of innovative new technologies out there that will allow people to derive water basically from thin air. Many of these are smaller in terms of water drinking stations, etc., but there are new and exciting technologies popping up globally. We're seeing a lot of these systems in Saudi Arabia, we're seeing that in India, and who better to go to for drought conditions than the dry places? So they've figured out a way to innovate and scale their atmospheric water generation systems to basically capture water from air. If you have at least 26% humidity, you're going to get an unlimited, endless supply of water. And on average, the Caribbean is always humid, 52 to 97% year round. So that's never an issue. The great thing about looking at different technologies and solutions is that they're scalable, they're renewable, they run off of renewable energy, so you don't have to worry about, you will obviously tie to the grid, but these are different ways that you can get to zero. I spoke about net zero and everyone having their climate adaptation considerations and their nationally determined contributions, and the goal and the race to get to net zero by 2030 or 2050 is certainly on. So we need to start looking at ways in which we can utilize technology and mechanisms such as these and partner them and pair them with other industries, as you see here in this picture, agricultural sector that always needs water, and it suffers continuously when we don't have enough of it. You can get quality, pure drinking water from a lot of these systems. A lot of these systems, much like other water generation systems, will provide you with minerals and dosing, etc. So that's always good to think. And then we spoke a little bit about circularity, and we'll get into that into the next slide. But atmospheric water generation provides more of a circular approach when we're thinking about it, okay? So when we think about circularity, what are we talking about? Well, I love this example from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, because people always think, oh, circularity, it's just about waste. Part of it is there's a biosphere side of circularity, and then there's a technosphere side of circularity, right? So when you're designing, the whole point is to design out waste from the beginning, right? You want to rethink what you're doing here when you look at circular systems, whether it's in your business operations or whether it's for natural resources and planning. Okay, it's about keeping products and materials in use consistently, so that they have reusability. And when we look at materials specifically for the tourism industry and specifically for hotels, I know we are meticulous about this in terms of what type of wood are we going to use, what type of tile are we going to get involved in. If we have carpet squares, what are we going to use there? The type of fabrics you're using, the type of sheets you're using, everything has a carbon footprint, and everything has the ability to be circular when innovation is at hand, right? And we're talking about looking at regenerating natural systems. So something like an air to water technology is naturally regenerating. If you have a farm to table concept and you also include composting, that's natural regeneration. Those are some circular concepts we could think about on the biosphere side. Looking at biogas, looking at anaerobic digestion, which is also composting, and looking at how materials are being made, plant-based materials, things that will biodegrade, truly biodegrade in your backyard composter if you don't have an industrial composting facility. Those are some of the things that we can think about there. But now when we get on the other side of circularity, we start looking at it from a business concept. It's a way to optimize, it's a way to feed and interconnect various systems to understand where are the issues within our tourism operation, within our how we're managing our hotel guests. How are we making sure that we're tracking and getting everything to, how are our departments working interconnectively to meet the goals that we want to meet for our clients. It's a great way to do risk management, and it's a great way to look at our supply chain from a finance standpoint, from a risk standpoint, because you want to talk about climate risk and financing. You heard in my introduction, I focus a lot on ESG, environmental social governance. Climate risk is huge when it comes to environmental social governance and understanding what could potentially happen based on the climate changes that we're anticipating over the next 10, 15, and 20 years. And then, of course, trade and how that works. We are big ocean states, but we use the ocean a lot to get everything that we need. So trying to figure out how we can be more resilient and make our supply chains more local, so that we can reduce a lot of that risk and disruption is really what the circular concept focuses on, is trying to consistently and continuously regenerate all of the different cycles that we're working within, from our materials to how we operate, to our business, to also our natural habitat. There are tons of benefits to circularity. We talk about the zero concept. You heard me mention it already. Using different technologies will allow you to kind of take the guesswork out of it, I would say, because sometimes changing behavior can be very, very difficult to do. So if we arm our guests and our staff with mechanisms through technology that also meet the sustainable development goals, then we're hitting two buckets, right? We're conserving, and then we're also making sure that we're being global citizens, and we're getting those social aspects of what we need to achieve and accomplish through. So a lot of benefits of circularity is obviously SDG number 12, which speaks well to me, is that responsible consumption and production. And we talk about our supply chain and management and what that looks like. And then some of the social benefits that we don't often think about. When you have and when you're integrating new technologies or you're integrating new conservation practices, people need to be in charge of these things. So we want to make sure that they're benefiting as well, that they're getting good education, that they're capacity building, that they're learning, that partnerships are being made, and that quality education is being had, and that everything that we're doing, we're making sure that we're analyzing it from a health benefit as well, to ensure that we're not depleting our own resources of our humans. So circularity demands capacity building, because without it, we won't be able to move forward. And it increases innovation because you're always looking for different ways in which to solve the problem. So I see innovation and circularity running together if they were on a graph, and the waste and maybe our carbon footprint running down if they were on a graph. So let's talk about climate and food just for a bit. I know that Turks and Caicos have embarked on this amazing initiative to ensure and safeguard food, and through backyard gardening tactics, and looking at how we can definitely ensure that personally through our residents as well as our tourism sector, that we have food security. With all of these natural disasters, we need to find solutions that work. Traditional farming methods sometimes may be disrupted all the time. So I'd be interested to understand if any of you are in fact having your own gardens or farming or getting involved in that. If you're experiencing any concerns, any issues you may be having, or you don't know where to start, I'd be interested to understand much about how that program is going and how things are moving forward with that. Because again, without food, we can't do anything, much like without water. So the ability for a lot of these agricultural practices to sequester carbon and to help us in that race to zero, to create more businesses, to be circular, to have a generating economy, and to be resilient to a lot of these disaster-related events is important. And the Pan American Health Organization has already noted that food security is under a severe impact based on these natural related disasters. And they are focusing a lot on how we can maintain and manage food security throughout the region, specifically as it relates to beefing up our agriculture sector and allowing more and more greenhouses to get put up, and for food security to be top of mind. We're looking also at diversifying the product. We all know that COVID had a huge issue, left a lot of gaps, allowed us to see a lot of the gaps and a lot of the issues that we may or may not have been facing in terms of food, and what climate really is doing. And then obviously we're seeing less and less of the things that we used to see, and we're looking further and further to get our supplies. So shoring up and safeguarding our food supply is extremely, extremely important. So I have another question for you. We're getting into the conservation part of our discussion, and I wanted to know from you where you think we fall. Now, coral reefs are huge everywhere around the world, but if coral reefs were a country globally, where would they rank in terms of GDP? 12th, maybe 7th? Would they be 22nd on the list? Would they be 3rd on the list? Type in the chat. Let me know your thought. Let me know what you think in terms of coral reefs and how much they actually do contribute to us. All right. Somebody said 3rd. Somebody said 7th. Okay, we have a couple of 3rds. Those who said 3rd are correct. If coral reefs were a country, we would be 3rd, right behind China and the United States in terms of our contribution to the economy. Coral reefs contribute $3.4 billion to Caribbean economies annually. $62 million of GDP annually in TCI is realized from the health of your coral reefs. We understand the importance of coral reefs at TCHTA, so we put together a guide for coral reef restoration to assist. This was done in partnership with the Nature Conservancy and the United Nations Environmental Program because we saw the need to really focus on how our tourism actions and activities may be harming our reef system. And also not just our activities, but when we look at how climate is changing and weathering events, we're seeing an immense amount of coral bleaching. Okay, coral reefs are so important. 4,000 jobs are realized from the coral reefs alone in Turks and Caicos, and that's just the coral reefs. Okay, that's not mangroves, that's not seagrass, that's not any other natural habitat. That's just in coral reef restoration. So you see that it's just such in coral reef. So you see the importance of it, right? So conserving our coral reefs through coral reef planting and transplanting is huge. I know that you guys have your own nonprofit there that's working on doing that, making sure to encourage and include guests in your coral reef restoration activities is always good. If they're snorkeling for a good cause, maybe it's something that they'll come back to do every year and help replant and regrow some of the coral reefs that may be endangered. Dominican Republic does a great job of it. It's all throughout their airports. You can't miss it. Bahamas also has a very active coral reef restoration network, and especially with the onslaught of all those hurricanes recently, they've been beefing up what they're doing there in terms of restoring their coral reefs. Coral reef policy is somewhat, most of the times, has been lacking. So in that guide, we do talk a little bit about policy and how to really shore up your coral reef policies. A lot of island nations have some really good legislation around it. A lot of them have marine protected areas. For those who have not protected or designated those as marine protected areas, that's very important. And then regulating the fisheries industry around that and what that looks like for your blue economy is critical. So seagrass and mangroves. These are another very important natural resource that we always have to consider. A lot of people look at mangroves as those, scraggly things that attract a lot of mosquitoes, but they do an immense amount of good for us. They are our storm protection, much like seagrass, which we don't talk a lot about. They help to reduce erosion. They are natural filters for the waters and our watersheds that we have. 135 million people in the Caribbean are directly dependent on mangroves for their livelihood, for their food, for their tourism assets. So managing and maintaining these is important. Mangroves can be worth or can be valued anywhere between $23,000 to $45,000 per hectare. So we see the economic benefits that mangroves have. And the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund, we partner with them, CAST, we have partnered with Caribbean Biodiversity Fund to really increase the level of understanding around biodiversity, around mangroves, around the need to restore them, and around the need to just manage them. But research in which they've done have shown that if we continue and just leave it as is, that within 60 years, all of those mangroves could disappear. So the need to protect, maintain, manage, and restore mangroves is important, not just in the Caribbean, but around the world. When we look at the economics of how do we support this, there are different mechanisms that are coming out now. I know everyone's probably heard about carbon credits, but they also have blue carbon credits and blue bonds, which Bahamas is starting to work on, or they actually probably hold, I think, one of the first blue bonds in the world. And seagrass has the ability to store carbon to the tune of $88 billion worth of carbon credit. Now, if that's not a regenerative solution and an economic circular solution, I don't know what is. If you're maintaining and managing your ecosystems within your ocean, your seagrass, your coral reefs, your mangroves, and you can turn that into blue carbon credits or blue bonds that can be sold in the carbon market, and that money then goes towards renewing and shoring up your own natural habitats, where it's all a win-win. A lot of people really look at conservation and it generating money exclusively. But now, when we look at the way in which the world is moving, and a lot of the science-based targets and a lot of these organizations are starting to look at ways in which we can utilize finance and find innovative financing mechanisms to manage and maintain a lot of these natural resources that are so important to not only our livelihoods but to our tourism sector, because that's the reason why people come to us as big ocean states. If we didn't have them, then what would we be? I mean, we have a lot of other culture and heritage and other things that we definitely need to shore up, that we definitely do a great job at making sure that we manage and maintain and putting that across. I think culture and heritage are two of the main things that the Caribbean has immense amount of, and we can definitely capitalize on those a lot more, in tandem with making sure that our natural resources and the things that people come know us for are definitely managed and maintained adequately. So globally, again, mangroves are being restored in Myanmar and in Indonesia. They contribute to a significant amount of jobs, especially for women. And what Indonesia has done is that they've put the task of managing, maintaining, tracking, and understanding what their mangrove systems are on the citizens. They have developed an app where you can kind of find the location, determine where your mangrove is, list basic information about it, and send it through, so that throughout Indonesia, they can start mapping out all of the resources that they have for their mangroves. And they're looking at different ways in which they can seed and encourage local communities, much like in the picture there, to start creating seedlings and saplings and selling them so that they can be planted, or utilizing them to be planted to restore the mangrove within those destinations. So mangroves are not a huge thing only in the Caribbean, but worldwide, we're seeing a lot more focus on restoring mangroves and making sure that they are in the best shape to safeguard against the storm surge and a lot of the issues that we're facing in terms of natural disasters. So let's talk a little bit about the concept of regenerative tourism. We went through resilience. We talked about circularity. We talked about conservation. We talked about innovation. And this is, wrapping it up into the new concept of regenerative tourism. I spoke a little bit about the heritage and the social impact and the culture. What regenerative tourism does, it really highlights the responsibility and that sharing of cultural customs and norms, along with making sure that we're regenerating the natural environment. It's about enhancing it. It's about engaging with the community and ensuring that whatever we're doing within our businesses has a corporate social responsibility mandate for our community. And it's aligning with social impact. Regenerative tourism looks to align itself with the social good and the social benefits a little bit more, and they place more emphasis on that because they share a lot of the challenges and opportunities and solutions that they face within the regenerative tourism network together. So they're all about collaborating to bring tourism together. They're all about sharing of best practices. And it's a different way in which we're finding that tourism entities are trying to separate themselves and say, listen, yes, while we are green and we are considerate of the environment, and while we are sustainable, we also are regenerative, not only in the natural assets, but in our social assets, in terms of how we treat our customers, in terms of how we treat our guests, in terms of how we treat our workers and the people who work with us. So regenerative tourism is another concept that has been talked about, and that's starting to really come hand in hand with circularity as well. So those are just a couple of things that I wanted to share with you guys today around conservation, its importance, understanding the value of these natural resources, looking at technology and how that can really increase our ability to be resilient, and how we can move forward. So for our future generations, obviously we need to implement these mitigation measures and adaptive solutions to help protect, restore, and regenerate not just our nature, but also, again, stressing that economy standpoint and the dollars that really are associated with managing and maintaining a lot of these resources, because these solutions will build capacity and provide for our future generations. We don't want a generation where there are no mangroves. I mean, that would just be devastating to me. So here are just a few resources and different things that I use to put this presentation together. Obviously, CAS and TCHTA, a lot of World Bank studies, a lot of climate resources, and I will be happy to share this with you guys if you want to have it as, you know, just as something to look back at. And then obviously I would like to thank you guys for your time and attention in contributing to make a better world. My name is Denaye Hinds, and I truly love what I do in terms of sustainability and working with sustainable technology to enhance the mechanisms and to encourage and increase the success of getting to zero by 2030 or 2050. And yeah, that's it for me. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to entertain them. If you have any comments or considerations or any topic that you want to discuss or learn more about, please feel free to utilize your Q&A at this time.
Thank you so much, Denaye. I mean, wow, a power-packed session, right? Words from education, analysis, carbon footprint, to ideas like water creation from humidity, you know? Thank you so much. I felt like this session was really educational and informative. A lot of things that you spoke about I didn't even know. And it definitely piqued my interest, and I'm hoping that it piqued a lot of our participants' interests as well. You guys feel free to put your questions in the chat. If you have any questions for Denaye, I do have one from Camilo, who asked earlier, are AWG systems cost restrictive?
I would say that when you look at AWG systems at scale, I don't believe they are cost restrictive. I would look at, when you look at the environmental degradation of desalination plants compared to atmospheric water generation, then there's really no comparison, because the atmospheric water generation does not leave any adverse impacts on the environment. So the additional cost that you need to deal with the brine that comes from desalination, the additional energy costs that's associated with running desalination plants, and the sheer size of them, all are entering into your OPEX. With AWG systems, their OPEX tends to be a bit lower, and you can scale them from 100 gallons, a day to 25,000 gallons a day. They can be small containerized units, or they can be huge warehouses. The fact that they're scalable and replicable, I think it's what is the most exciting about them. You can have water stations, that have branding and information and everything integrated into them. And the other thing is that they're internet ready, they're IoT ready. So if you want to track consumption data and understand what your consumption patterns are, then you can do that. General atmospheric water generation systems can be as low as, maybe a couple of thousand up to 2 million for larger scale. And then when you look at, again, the OpEx and the never-ending supply of water that can be generated, I feel that over the long term, they will become a lot more, you will see a lot more coming down in the price point. You're most welcome.
Attendees, if you wish to do so, you can open up your microphones and ask questions directly. If you're not comfortable doing so, you can drop us a line in the chat. I have a question. We've all seen, I guess, products that claim to be safe for the coral reef or our sun, sand, and sea. What specifically should buyers be looking for within those products to ensure that they're actually doing what they're claiming to do, being protective to our coral systems?
Noted. That's a very good question. I tend to look at third-party certification for a lot of those things because I don't know every chemical or every name on the back of the list of those things. So I like to look at items that maybe have a green seal or are Green Guard certified, things that have reef safe or uh, I believe there's another logo. I can't remember the exact name, but it's something with reef in it. Excuse me, I'm forming a blank here. But I tend to look at the labels that are actually there, and then I actually research the labels to make sure that they have third-party accreditation. So if anything, in terms of any environmental claim that anyone is making for a product, for a building, for a system, for a process, if it is third party verified, and if I find that the verification system makes sense and it is actually audited, that gives me my peace of mind to know that this, in fact, is a safe product to use. So you do have to do a bit of background research. You can't just pick anything up off the shelf that says reef approved just because they want to market it and say that it is. They should have an actual stamped label from a verified source that has a third party auditing system within it. And again, that goes for any certification, whether you're talking about a hotel environmental certification or a product certification. When you're looking at products in terms of furniture, for instance, Green Guard certifications are very important because they tend to use no formaldehyde. They tend to be more interlocking and things of that nature. When it comes to products in terms of creams, like you mentioned, like maybe suntan lotion and those things, I would definitely look at the label and research whatever the third party vendor is saying.
All right, thank you for that. Thank you so much. I did have another question. I know you were talking about the water supply, right? And how often we should test our water supply. But for those properties or businesses that actually have backup water supplies, I'm assuming the testing should be done before they actually start conserving or having space to save this water. How often do they test the now backup water supplies that are stored away?
I would suggest testing them at least biannually, so twice a year at least. If you want to have a predictive kind of maintenance schedule, I would definitely just make sure to test them, the backup water supply, but I would also test everything on a quarterly basis, at least on a quarterly basis for Legionella, for bacteria, for any other type of for E. coli. Those things, they pop up and you don't even really notice them. So continuous testing on a quarterly basis at least, and then for the backup for all of your water systems, and then for the backup water, I would say at least biannually. With tank cleaning, people, that water is not going to be clean for you to use if that tank is not clean. So a lot of people tend to leave their tanks and their water. Another thing that we need to be considerate about when we store water is the movement of that water. Stagnant water can lead to severe health issues and can lead to severe, yes, I'm just going to say it, severe health issues. So making sure that you have some type of way to move that water around every so often, making sure that you have circular ways to utilize that water, whether it be through irrigation and then you're filling it back up, but don't just shoot it out there and then pour it back in. Like, we need to start thinking more circularly about the systems that we use and the habits that we instill.
All right, I have another question on the floor here. Camilo asks, how can we overcome the issue of scalability with coral reef restoration across the Caribbean? There is an immediate need for land-based restoration labs in light of bleaching and disease, but it is difficult to encourage investment in these spaces, especially in the Caribbean region.
There are a lot of funds right now that are providing money for coral reef restoration. Let me go back to when you say the issue of scalability, are you saying that it's not happening rapidly enough? Or do you mean that, because I've seen, I mean, realistically, to increase the scalability of it, we just need to have more capacity building. That's first. So making sure that people understand what coral reef restoration is, how to get it done. There are definitely many mechanisms and funds out there through the United Nations and other entities, through USAID as well, who are providing funding for capacity building around coral reef restoration. I know Caribbean Biodiversity Fund does that as well. So there are a lot of there are a lot of ways that you can do it online to just encourage education about what coral reef restoration is. And then when it comes to labs now, I know in Bermuda, I'm Bermudian, we have our BIOS Research Center. Looking at partnerships with academic institutions and research fellowships, I think, is another way to look at trying to get investment into a lot of these much needed labs and more experimental solutions, right? Finding that partnership with a university that already has funding or that's tapped into that market or that marine biology market already, they could be very, very helpful in determining how you can scale your restoration efforts and look at different ways to identify diseases and how they may occur. I know that you guys have that issue with one of your main, underwater assets. It's a spiny, a spiny, I'm not sure the name of it, but spiny coral or something that has a lot of issues. I found that partnering with academic research institutions have been favorable. I'm actually working on doing something similar to that for a project in Aruba, where we're looking to reforest an area through plantings, but we don't understand the carbon sequestration rate of those plantings. And not everybody who's doing the plantings understands how to do it correctly. So we've partnered with the local university there to do a lot of the research and to determine the methodologies that they're going to use to help us to measure the carbon sequestration, but also to provide capacity building and education to a lot of the volunteers who want to come out and do plantings and want to, be involved, but may not have the knowledge to do it correctly, because you don't want people, it comes under the whole, wave of volunteerism. How do we encourage our guests to kind of be involved in our community, and what that looks like? A lot of it is education, education, education. Oh, I see. You meant more in terms of equity. Listen, as I said, I'm from Bermuda, so we don't get included in a lot of those funds either. So I get it. It's always the same islands. But again, I think academic, research-wise, reach out across the pond. People are doing things in the Netherlands and they may have money and they may be willing to give to Turks and Caicos if the United States is not. The UK government has a mandate and they want to conserve 30% of all of their underwater resources by 2030. That's not even that far from now. So the EU may have considerable funding that may be available, because as I know it, we are British territories. So we should be able to connect with them to understand and find other sources of funding. But I get it; it can be a little bit frustrating when you see the things that you want to do, and because of your geographic location, and they assume that you're established and well off, that you don't need it, but we all need it. So yeah, there is an issue with equity when it comes to funding around that. But I would say you would have to be very, very creative in how you get your funding sources. And I don't know, maybe I know that there are tourism enhancement funds. Most of the Caribbean islands have those now, where they have they're charging for residents to come in. Maybe there's something where for the next year and a half they can siphon off some of that tourism enhancement fund that they collect to go towards research or to go towards restoration efforts. I'm not sure. I'm not involved. I did not do a deep dive into the economics of how TCI manages their funds, but there could be unique and different ways in which you can find the funding. If you've valued your resources already, and you know the economic impact that it is able to create, you can build a good case.
I
I hope
love
that answers.
I love it, Denaye. Yeah. I would say to Camilo as well, stretch your net very wide. Don't give up, just because you're not getting the answers that you want from the onset. But yeah, be creative in your ask, and somebody will definitely, hopefully, give you the answer that you're looking for. Any more questions from the floor? I have a last one here. I know that you spoke about blue carbon and translating that into credits and bonds. Can you give specific resources for any person or company that is interested in doing that? How do they get more information on that? How do they go about doing so?
There is the Blue Carbon Initiative. That's the website that they can go to get more information on it. That was my resource. So I'm more into the carbon credit side of things, looking at credits more from land-based and nature-based solutions, not so much ocean as yet, but I'm getting there. Catch me in probably maybe say mid-year. Well, not mid-year, gosh, we're already in May. Towards the end of the year, and I'll probably be a better resource on blue carbon credits. But for now, I rely on the Blue Bond Initiative to get my resources and my information around that. I think it's very unique. I think it's very interesting. I'd encourage Bermuda to get involved with it specifically because I know we've been doing a lot of work around our oceans and our biodiversity. And we've been sharing a lot of that information. I know that Bermuda and TCI share a lot of information. Barbados and Bermuda share a lot of information around that. So I think it is a definitely worthwhile endeavor. Outside of blue bonds, there are also land debt swaps. Barbados did one with the Nature Conservancy. If you're looking at land-based conservation mechanisms, where they will provide you with debt against the land that'll be at a considerably lower rate if you're looking to conserve it, and then you can use that to generate funds to then manage the conservation efforts that you're looking to do. So the Nature Conservancy has a really good program there for that. And yeah, a little bit more information that you were looking for, but I like to be thorough.
No problem with being thorough. Thank you so much for that. Is there any information that you want to share on your business, JustaTAAD?
Well, yes, if anyone is looking to get more involved, JustaTAAD does a myriad of things. Obviously, do a lot of communication and information. I just love to talk to people about what it is that we do in terms of sustainable tourism. So if you're looking for any type of capacity building around that, we offer, those services. We do a lot of consulting in terms of third-party certifications and getting people ready for that. A lot of auditing and compliance around that to confirm whether or not you are doing what you say you're doing. So when I speak about third-party verification. I speak about it specifically as an auditor and compliance. I've been doing compliance for years, and that's why testing is so important to me, and standards. I believe that they bring a lot of interconnectedness, and they allow you to look at areas within your business that you didn't look at before through a sustainability lens, and that allows you to kind of refocus on it. So we do offer a lot of that. And basically through another venture that I'm working on is a lot of sustainable technology focused specifically on resilient adaptive strategies, using technology as a mechanism to take the guesswork out of it and not relying on human error, which we often, human habit change, which is the hardest thing to change. So if you want to have more information on that, atmospheric water generation, or if you want to look at agro-tech solutions or anything to do with water storage, etc., we do offer all of that. So yeah.
Okay. You have some people that want to connect with you. They'll place their information in the chat.
Perfect.
What about
perfect.
AI? How does that play a role? How does AI play a role in everything that you do? Does it play a role? And how does it play a role if it does?
AI is right now for me a bit more in terms of when I'm preparing for things or when I'm looking to do a lot more research based. In terms of integrating AI into systems, as I'm moving more into the sustainable technology space, I'm looking at that, but it's not top of mind. But I do know that it's something that needs to be integrated. But it's still a mountain to climb. I'll admit. I'm not afraid of it though. Actually, there are some tourism initiatives ongoing in Belize in terms of how they're looking at their sugarcane management. They are including AI into a lot of their mobile solutions for managing the sugarcane value chain, which is interesting. If you guys want to look into that, that's a project that's being run through International Development Bank, through their Compete Caribbean. And yes, Camilo, I know IDB does not give us money either, but you can learn some case studies from some of the work that's been going on there, and how they're integrating AI into their value chain, which is definitely something that I'm looking to integrate it into a lot of the tech that we're going to be looking at trying to roll out.
Well, thank you so much, Denaye. Any last words or thoughts or comments for us?
I would just like to thank you guys so much for extending the invitation for me to speak with you. If there are people who were not able to join, but you think this information is valuable, I just ask that you share it with them. And every day, I just want you guys to consider that small steps make a huge difference when they're all combined together. Many hands make light work. And don't think that just because we are small in nature that we are not big in ideas and accomplishments, because collaboration is key in anything that we do. And I'm an open source book for anything or any idea that I know of or case study that I have, and willing to share it for the betterment of our economies, both for tourism as well as for nature. So thank you again for your attention. This has been a lot of fun for me, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this presentation.
Thank you so very much, Denaye. It was an excellent presentation. For our listeners, we have put Denaye's information in the chat, and as you can see, it's on the slide there. So if you want to reach her directly, we are just rounding off the hour with a few minutes away now. So I just want to thank you guys for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. Please look out for our up and coming webinars. The next one would be on hurricane preparedness. The reminders and invitations for that will go out shortly as we are heading into the hurricane season. I can't believe it. We're almost in the middle of the year. The year seems to be flying by. We do think that it's important to share with our members just a refresher on making sure that you are safeguarding your property, your assets, yourselves. So look out for information on that up and coming session. For those of you that are on the call that have friends or colleagues or know businesses that are not TCHTA members, please feel free to visit the ladies in Salt Mills Plaza or email us at info@turksandcaicos.hta.com. And please, when you are posting anything about sustainability. We'll be happy to, share your photos, share it on your social media platforms. Please, make sure that you tag us on This Is TCHTA. I am a TCHTA, TCI Strong, or Why I Love TCI. Obviously, hashtags go before all of those. Again, I am your host, Najana Andrews. I am chairman of your membership committee. We want to hear from you. If there's anything that you guys are interested in finding out more information on, or things that you think would make for a great webinar, please feel free to reach out to us. We want to hear from you. This is your association. So just let us know what's on your mind. I just want to thank you guys again for joining us, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
Denaye.